C Property Services, making your real estate dream a reality.
And more. This is our 7th episode, and tonight I'm your host, Karen Coke. On this program, we seek to invite other real estate professionals to give you tips on what you need to know in order to make your real estate transaction seamless. And tonight is no less of a night than the other ones that we have been having. Tonight we have a very special guest for you again. And in a few minutes, I will be introducing him. But before that, tonight's topic is advice from the structural engineer with the real estate transaction process. We go right into tonight's quote. And tonight's quote goes like this: the best time to buy a house is always 5 years ago, and that's by Ray Brown. Right, so I'm just gonna go right into the introduction of our guest speaker. And he is none other than Mr. Oswin Brooks. And he's a structural engineer for over 29 years. And he's the owner of O.O. Brooks and Associates Limited. And this company is a civil engineering and project management company. This time, I would like you all to make welcome Mr. Oswin Brooks. So we go right into the question, and my first question to you is: what are the requirements to become a structural engineer?
Now, you have to be science-based. It's a science-based course. So you have to know your chemistry, your maths, your geography, your physics. And those are basically the areas that you have to specialize in. It's a science-based subject. So you have to practice the science area. Yeah. If you don't love science, you're not going to go into civil engineering or do branch. I was coming back to the structural engineering. The structural engineer is a branch of civil engineering. Civil is the broader area of engineering, and it's the broadest engineering area of any engineering aspect that you can think of. I was really looking at it earlier on. You have different areas for civil engineering. You have construction and management, geotechnical, structural, transportation engineering, water resource engineering, environmental engineering, coastal engineering, earthquake engineering, surveying engineering, and material engineering. And these are the 10 main aspects. So like, and let me pull a segue right now. This is like medicine. You have obstetrician and gynecologists, you have orthopedics, you have other areas of medicine, you have internal medicine. So it's just like that. It's your specialization. Now, my specialization is structural engineering. So if you want to do structural engineering, you have to be science-based. And that is just a starting point. From there, you can work your way into it.
Okay. All right. So my next question is, what does the structural engineer do?
Well, the structural engineer by far design everything that you can think, everything around you. We design roads, we design buildings, we design bridges, just about anything. We even have even gone to designing aeroplanes. Parts of the aeroplane is designed by a structural engineer.
Wow.
So it's a broad aspect that structural engineers work at. We do a lot in terms of everything around you basically involves some aspect of structures, even if it is civil.
Okay, awesome. And is it necessary to get a structural engineer's report when buying a newly constructed building, or is it just for older buildings?
It's for older buildings, because over a period of time, these older buildings will go through wear and tear, earthquake movements, whatever you can. So these buildings go through it. And I speak categorically for NHT. NHT will ask a structural engineer's report if the building is over 40 years old. Now, I have been doing this for the better part of, 30, 32 years. While I was at NHT, I would go out and provide structural report. That time I was not a structural engineer. And let me state this also. For you to be called a structural engineer, you also have to have a professional engineer attached to your name. So I am Oswin Brooks, PE, whatever the number is. So you have to have a professional engineer attached to your status. And I will speak again for, from an NHT standpoint, that when you want building, NHT is investing, and people are going to be investing millions of dollars into a building. So a structural engineer has to provide an accurate report, because if you don't, people literally will be killed, for want of a better word. And I'm pulling another segue right now. My lecturer said to me when I was in university, do you know that you're licensed to kill? You know the James Bond movie, License to Kill? And I was wondering what was he talking about. But he said to me, if you don't design the building properly and ensure that your members are right, people will die. So anything I do in structural engineering, I make sure I prefer to go over the edge than to go under the edge. If you understand in a terminology like that. Because when I go over the edge, I mean I will put in an extra reinforcement. I will design the thing a bit stronger.
Okay.
So people will not.
Awesome.
That's what I mean by going over the edge than under.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So is it necessary for the seller to also get a structural report, or is it just for buyers?
The seller can get us engineer's report and the buyer can get an engineer's report, because you might find that the seller might know a structural engineer and he might want to put in certain things. Now the buyer wants to know what he's going into, what he's getting into. So he also wants an engineering report to cover and say, but my engineer says this is wrong and your engineer says that is. We want to ensure that it is done in a proper manner.
Okay, great. All right. So what other use does a structural engineer's report serve?
Well, the structural engineer report will tell you the integrity. The main thing is to tell you the integrity of the building. And the integrity of the building is to say to you, well, this building is solid. This building is good. This building will last another 30, 40, 50 years. And it will go on like that. So that's the main purpose of the structural engineering report. I don't know if it's been telling you any other thing about it, unless you're going to go into details or you want to know the foundation type, where was the foundation done, everything like that, which I don't think you need to, but it basically and mainly tells you what the building is. Is the building sound? Can someone go in there and live without putting their life at risk? We try to do what is best at all times as engineers. We want to ensure that we give you the best.
What consequence can a structural engineer face if he or she fails to report on a crack that he or she thought was minor, but it turns out to affect the structural integrity of a building?
And I can speak again categorically for myself, and I can speak for a lot of engineers. We don't take check. We do not take check, because persons will die if we do this. So we do not and will not and is not supposed to give inaccurate report. If that is so, then the body called the Professional Engineering Registration Association can take action against the professional engineer. And to do that, another engineer will have to go and do a report and do his diagnosis. And when he does his diagnosis, then he will say, yes, this report is flawed. And then the board, that report will go to the body, and the body will take action against the professional engineer. He can even end up losing his license as a professional engineer. Just like how you can have it for lawyers, you can have it for doctors, you also have it for structural engineers. So you can lose your license. And to lose your license as a professional engineer is one way of losing your bread, because nobody will come to you now to say, okay, I hear that you're a structural engineer, I want a report, because you must have a practicing or a license to practice as a structural engineer. And once you do not have that license, you're not entitled to practice. It is a legal matter, and you can be sent to prison or fined severely for it. Okay, and let me put this in, Mrs. Coke. In my 32 years of writing engineer's report, I have only turned down one house, and this house wanted to be turned down because this house was split right in the middle.
Okay.
And I went out there after that and looked back at the house, and the person fixed the house, and you could not believe it's the same house that I turned down. Marvelous looking house. I know if they ask me for an engineer's report, I would give them the thumbs up.
Wow. So that I think the fact that you were only able to turn down one, I think that is speaking volume for our built industry then.
Yes, it does. It does. I can tell you for sure, the built industry, it is said, and a record has also shown it, that 90% of our houses are over designed, over reinforced, over everything.
And I can understand the reason for that. We are an island. We are living on different fault belts.
We are in a hurricane, and we are on a tectonic plate.
Right.
So we are in a hurricane zone, and we're in a hurricane zone. In fact, let me go a bit further. The code that Miami is using to build their house is actually Jamaica's building code, or some aspects of Jamaica's building code to build their buildings right now.
Wow. I tell you, our little island is tallow as usual, little and tallow as usual.
Yes, we are. So,
all right. So
even if the leanness of the oldest of building, right now I can tell you, look at Giddy House, for example. Giddy House is still standing after all these years.
Yes.
It is. So it means that we went a little extra to build our houses.
Yes.
We go a little extra to build them.
Sure. All right. Please state some types of defects that can affect the building structure.
The main types of defects that can affect the building structure are structural cracks. I'll go for termites, but termites to a lesser extent. But structural cracks will be one of the main things that your building will experience. Now, a lot of persons see small cracks and swear that it might be a structural cracks. Now, structural cracks in a wall crack from one side, and you can still go on the other side and see. That's a structural crack. Now, an airline crack is just a crack that you will see. And I will pull another segue. I like to pull
on the surface.
On the surface. Just like you as a human being, you eat. You eat, so your body takes in food. The food as in air molecules. So if your stomach is not good, you're going to let out the air molecule one way or another. Either you bring it up or you let it out the other way. So concrete, on the other side, concrete is cement, sand, gravel, and water. All these have air molecules in them. These air molecules will have to dissipate when you mix all of them together. So that is how you will see these little cracks on your wall. That's why you vibrate your concrete when you're doing it, so that when you vibrate your concrete, it dissipates. The air molecules get dissipated and it looks like a solid surface. Now, if you don't vibrate your concrete, you're going to see these cracks because these air molecules must go out into the natural realm and must dissipate some way, somehow, some form. So they must be that like that. They must go out.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, what advice would you give to someone who wishes to enter into the structural engineering field?
And as I said in my first point, you have to be science-based. Now, if you like engineering, if you like to pull things apart, and I'll tell you a little story again. My father knew that I was going to be an engineer. He knew. And I have gotten many beatings for this. Because I pull things down. I pull. Sometimes I can't fix back, but I pull. And he knew. When, as I said in my first instance, when I did my first O-levels and my mother said, I'm going to send him back to school. My father said, send the boy go flash cement on wall. I have never flashed cement on the wall. But if you flash the cement on the wall, I can tell you if you did it right or you didn't do it right based on the training I have gotten. So, yes. If you want to do engineering, any aspects of engineering, but consider structural engineering, for you to build a building and the building stand up and you look at it and ensure that it is, you have to have a knowledge of science, mathematics, physics, mathematics, chemistry, geography, because what you're dealing with the ground. So you're dealing with geotechnics. You're dealing with how parts function, so you're dealing with chemistry. You're dealing with how they move, so you're dealing with movement, so you're dealing with physics. So those are the areas that you're going to. If you want to go into civil engineering and major in science, you're going to have to be good in the science. You're going to have to stick to the science and know that this will work for you. So those are the areas. The science is the area to go because it's a science-based profession.
Okay. All right. There was a question that I should have asked earlier, but I think I'll make it my final question.
Okay.
And, in some areas that I go around, in some areas in Spanish Town, some areas in Kingston, these houses have huge cracks. And I was informed that it's the type of soil that the houses were built on, meaning that the area was swampy.
Yes.
And so it's clay soil. As a result, these properties or these houses or these buildings are susceptible to crack as a result of the earth movement and so on.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little on that so that
I will elaborate.
Benefit of the audience.
Okay, for the benefit of the audience. Now, a lot of persons want to buy buildings and I want to build buildings. They don't know anything about the soil. I would suggest it might be expensive at the forefront, but guess what? You're going to benefit in the long term. Now, I would suggest that you do a basic geotechnics report on your type of soil. Now, Jamaica's clay soil, it has alluvial soil and different sort of soil. Now, I'll speak for Portmore. I live in Portmore, so I'll speak for Portmore and I'll come to other areas in Kingston. Now, if you notice, Portmore houses are built on what you call a raft foundation. Now, the raft foundation is that the entire house is sitting on top of that raft. So if there's an earth tremor, the entire house moves in one. Now, most persons who are building houses go for what you call a strip footing. And why they go for a strip footing, it's easier to go with the strip footing. But remember, the land is like a lady. After she has a baby, her body takes time to settle again. That's why the land is referred to as Mother Earth and not Father Earth. It has goes through, right? And I like to be plain enough. It takes time for the land to settle again. So once the land starts to settle again, with a strip footing, you will have cracks at different areas because you might find one aspect of the land between a 12 inches span as two different types of soil. So you ought to know what sort of building you are going to put on in your area. So a lot of these are related to soil because the type of soil that is there, you're applying load to the soil and the soil is reacting, the earth is moving, and as I said before, we are in an earthquake zone. So therefore, when the soil starts to move, the first thing that gets affected is your foundation. Once your foundation gets affected, then your walls will get affected and everything else will get affected because your foundation is the firmest thing that you want to build. And another segue again, when we're designing as engineer, we're designing open space. The foundation is the last thing that we design. So we design the foundation last to see if all of this fancy stuff that we are going to be designing out in space, if it can get. So the geotechnical engineer comes in first. He gives you the soil report and say, yes, this soil is good, or this is the type of foundation he's going to be recommending for this soil. You cannot go against the sciences. If it's A plus B is equal to C, you can't say A plus D is equal to C. It's just that. It's a science and it's a science base and it can't be anything else but that.
So just a question, quick question here. So the
geotechnical engineer.
Okay, so that's a different engineer.
That's a branch of civils that I read out earlier on. Remember, I read 10 main areas of civil.
Okay.
The geotechnical is the one, all aspects of the soil, every inch of the soil, he can tell you about a particular soil and what is best for that soil.
Yes, but the mere fact that most financial institutions that are granting mortgages usually are maybe not all of them would require a structural engineer's report, as you had said. I know definitely that NHD does, and I think the others are catching up because I remember having to provide a structural engineer report at one point. So, depending on the age of the building. Yeah. So what I'm saying here is that I never heard of a geotechnical engineer before.
Yes.
So how at what point you were saying they should actually come to test the soil.
Yes.
But is it lack of knowledge? Why we don't hear more about geotechnical?
No, well, in Jamaica you have a few geotechnical engineering companies. You have Gentech. Mm-hmm. Gentech is a geotechnical engineer, is an engineering company, but it specializes in geotechnical. What you do not want to do is to put up a building on a soil and do not know nothing about that soil. Because the moment that you put something on it and the soil says, listen, I can't take this load, it's going to collapse. So you're actually applying load to the soil, and you ought to know if the soil can take that load.
Okay. All right. I think maybe possibly why these financial institutions wouldn't necessarily require the probably if it were a new structure, I would imagine they would definitely need it again.
Yes.
But like a building that is already in existence for 40 years, it never crumbled. All that has happened is that they need to check on its integrity moving forward.
Integrity, yes.
Yes. So I figured now that I am analyzing the whole thing, I'm figuring now that is why it's only a structural engineer that will be required at that point. But definitely, if you're about to put up a new structure, then most definitely you need your geotechnical engineer to report on the soil type
of soil, yes,
and advise whether or not such a structure
that is true.
Is suitable.
That is true. But you see, in days gone by, a person will just look at the soil and say, yes, man, this looks like we can build a building on it, and he ignorant. So as you pointed out earlier on, they were ignorant of what can happen. Now, as time evolves, you get the scientists coming out, and we are getting a lot of things, and you're learning more about the engineering and all different kinds. So therefore, a lot of persons now will be more cautious where they build, how they build, and why they build that particular house and that particular land, because they are more learned about the science or about engineering aspects of it. You know?
Wow. I tell you, I know that I can't exhaust this area enough, but in terms of the number of structural engineers, do we have enough structural engineers in Jamaica?
We have structure. In fact, you have for I'm going to go back to the Professional Engineer Registration Board. As I said, a civil engineer would have done aspects of structural engineer. You would have done aspects of geotechnical engineer. You would have done aspect of materials engineer. You would have done transportation engineering, everything.
Yes.
But it's just a specialization. Yes, there are structural engineers in Jamaica, and you have quite a.
So would a financial institution take a report from a civil engineer who has all the engineering aspects under his belt, or
I think because from my area, I am civil and structural. So you can apply for both civil engineering and structural engineering, or you can apply for civil and environmental. It depends on the professional body if they want to give you. Now, a civil engineer can sign your drawing, can sign it, but the body says you're not supposed to practice in the area that you're not a specialist. So I can look at an environmental engineering thing, but I cannot sign off on it because that's not my area of specialization.
Okay.
So you cannot sign off. You can look at it, make comments, but you can't sign off on it because that's not the area of specialization.
Yes, I asked the question if you think there are enough.
There are enough civil and structural engineers, and quite a few good ones are here. I can tell you that. We are ranked we are ranked very well worldwide.
Okay, awesome. And in terms of when I asked you the question about selling the profession to someone else, someone who would like to come into the profession, do you mentor any young persons into the profession, or?
Yes, I do. I am a teacher at heart. So all my friends would come to me and ask me, what do you think about this beam? And first thing I will go to them and I will say to them, this is how it functions. It does this and it does that, whatever the case might be. And I will tell them how it functions, why it functions that way, and I say, this way you are guided. So therefore, learn from this. Don't make the mistake of trying to shortcut it, because if you shortcut it, it will act upon you in the long run.
Okay.
So I do mentor persons. I like to tell persons about engineering. I like to give them advice about engineering. I like to ensure that what they are doing is proper. So a lot of persons see me. In fact, I have been told that I'm not gloating now. I'm not being egotistic either, but I've been told that I'm a very good engineer. I just consider myself an engineer. That's me. Just simple an engineer. Right? If I have to go in details to tell you what I have done and some of the projects I've worked on, then that's a total different ball game. And I'm pulling another segue for your audience now. I have actually worked on the channel tunnel. I think I told you this before. And I designed the entire catenary system that makes the train run.
The what channel?
Catenary system.
No, what channel have you worked on?
Channel tunnel, the one that takes you from London to France.
Oh, wow.
I've worked on that project. It's for me, it's a project. It's a project. Persons have seen my resume and look at it and say, you worked on that? That's an illustrious project. I bat my eye and say it's a project. But it's nice that I've worked on the project, and I've even left my mark in the tunnel. I wrote my initials at ring ring 1680 in the tunnel, because you know the tunnel, the walls of the tunnel are built of concrete.
Okay.
And that is where it is. So I have actually left my mark there, and I've never traveled on that train. I went to England in 2018 and I have not traveled on that train, but I'll get around to it sometime. But it was a beautiful project, and that was while I was in university.
Wow.
I came back to Jamaica and I've gotten a bit more advice and a bit more things. So it's good.
Yes. All right. Once again, Mr. Oswin Brooks was our guest tonight. And I tell you, I learned so much a while ago, you know, and of course, this is a whole new learning experience, learning curve for me, and I hope it is the same for you. So I want to give Mr. Brooks a thumbs up, or you know, some kudos in the chat, you know, because I tell you, it's an this is what we call an educational segment, or an educational channel. It's not about, you know, the run-of-the-mill channels around. You know, this channel is here for us to the business of real estate is so vast, and it has so many players in it that we ought to really learn, you know, about the different, you know, how we put the different pieces of the puzzle together, you know, to make them work.
Can I interject 1 minute, Mrs. Coke? Do you know that most real estate companies in Jamaica right now, as a civil structural engineer, working with them? Yes.
All right. So, you know, we just have to do what we have to do, you know, and learn as much as we can. So thanks again, Mr. Brooks, and all the very best in your endeavor.
Tune into our live stream, Real Estate-ically Speaking, with yours truly every second and fourth Friday as of November 2021. You can contact us at the information on screen.